That is no country for old men. The young in one another's arms, birds in the trees, those dying generations at their song. The salmon falls, the mackerel crowded seas, fish, flesh, or fowl commend all summer long whatever is begotten, born, and dies. Caught in that sensual music, all neglect monuments of unaging intellect. An aged man is but a paltry thing, a tattered coat upon a stick, unless soul clap its hands and sing, and louder sing for every tatter in its mortal dress. Nor is there singing school, but studying monuments of its own magnificence, and therefore I have sailed the seas and come to the holy city of Byzantium.
Thousands are sailing across the western ocean to a land of opportunity that some of them will never see. Fortune prevailing across the western ocean, their bellies full, their spirits free. They'll break the chains of poverty and they'll dance.
Greetings, fellow Earth babies, and welcome to Post-Punk Heartstrings. I'm Jimmy James S. Butler, and I hope you're all doing well out there. I'm doing okay. Thank you for asking. I'm sure a few of you wondered how I was doing, and you possibly even said out loud to yourself, "How are you doing, Jimmy James?" And I appreciate that. I appreciate the sentiment, even though I can't hear it. I know it's happening. I know it's a little off topic, but with the death of Shane MacGowan of Pogues fame a couple of weeks ago, I wanted to bring us in today with a little bit of a tribute. So I looked through my favorite Pogues song and picked one that I thought maybe brought us a little bit closer to the topic of the day, our Ocean Blue Part 2 episode. And I did a little mashup of Dermot Crowley reading a portion of the poem Sailing to Byzantium, and then brought us into the Pogues, Thousands Are Sailing. So thank you for indulging. I'm sure there's some Shane MacGowan and the Pogues fans out there, and I'm sure there were at least a few of you who appreciated me paying homage. Did you know there's 3 different ways to say the word homage? Maybe you think I'm saying it wrong. There's a French way, hommage. There's a British way, homage. And then there's an American way, homage. You're welcome. You got that little tidbit for free. Wait a minute, you're getting this whole thing for free, aren't you? Well, get a little extra bit of entertainment this week. I don't want to spend too much time on an introduction in fear of losing some of you, but I do want to mention another podcast I've been listening to and point you towards it. You may enjoy it. It's a podcast called Heavyweights. I'm a big fan of the podcast This American Life, and Ira Glass is wont to recommend various other podcasts. I'm sure he probably has some connection with the people or the shows that he recommends, but there's one in particular that he recommended, and it is the Heavyweight podcast that I mentioned. So it won't be everyone's cup of tea, but it's this quirky little podcast hosted by Jonathan Goldstein, and each episode is named after a person. And there's one episode that I've listened to recently that I'm thinking of that really resonated with me quite a bit, and it is episode number 2, and it's called Gregor. And I really did not see exactly where this episode was going, although it's kind of telegraphed throughout it. So if you go to check this out, as you listen to the Gregor episode of Heavyweight, stay with it, because it turns into something that you probably won't expect and I didn't expect. I don't want to make it sound like it's this over-the-top, like, amazingly weird thing that it develops into, but I will say this. Moby is part of the episode, and it's not like I'm a particularly big Moby fan or even a fan at all, really. I probably couldn't name a song. I think I remember one song back in the early 2000s, maybe. But in this episode, it is very interesting what Moby has to say regarding happiness and success. And I think it's a really great reminder to all of us about where we're at in life and what we've achieved and what success we've had and what that means And I think we judge ourselves so very harshly when it comes to life accomplishments and our value and how we put those things together and pour a meaning into them or the lack of them. So I know I'm throwing a lot of nebulous things out there, but I really loved this episode. And so I'm recommending that you go check out Heavyweight, and in particular, the episode number 2, Gregor. So now that I've got my little recommendation of the episode out of the way, I'm going to send you right back into the second half of Jamie and I's conversation on the Ocean Blues' Cerulean. Okay, so next one's interesting. Okay, so you said, I believe on Mercury, I might get this wrong. You said you felt like that maybe that was the one song that like was this, this is the one that's not like the others.
Sounded a little bit different at the beginning,
yeah. So I feel like the planetarium scene is that song on this album. I think it's the least dreamy of the music part, which is ironic because it's the planetarium scene.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's the least dreamy and spacey. So what are your thoughts about the planetarium scene?
Well, I put heaven ? And then I put I think so.
I put the same thing. I put heaven ? Well, a better place we go to. I put heaven ? after that.
Yep.
And then I put beyond this life reality. So I don't know.
And then I put rapture ? And then I put a smiley face because ironically, having been married to Derek for a dozen years now, that was one of our major disagreements our first few years. I was raised Garb Baptist. We do the rapture. I was a premillennial rapture. And he was like, the rapture is not in the Bible. And I'm like, bite your tongue. Yes, it is. And he goes, no, the second coming. I mean, shut your mouth. What you talking about, Willis? And so we had round and round and round, but I believe in being teachable and I believe in studying. So I went through and did lots of studies. My dad was a big end times person, and so was John. And my mom and I both kind of had the same philosophy. I don't want to talk about it. It doesn't make any difference. Just be ready and do your life like you're supposed to. But I've really, especially now being Anglican, we believe in the second coming, but you're not going to be raptured out of the tribulation. That's a really elitist view. We're not going to have to go through trouble.
It's been a long time. There was a period of time where I read a lot and studied a lot. Isn't like the rapture like more of a relatively modern construct of belief? Okay. That's what I thought. It
came about in the 60s or 70s. I mean, the church universal going all the way back. You can't really get past all of the times in the Bible where it says you will experience tribulation. And then it's like, well, now we're not going to.
But in that case, we're not going to.
And so it just really bothers me because I've even said to my mom a couple times, because she's like, oh, I'm not going to experience, I'm going to be raptured out before. And I'm like, how do you not think that we're already experiencing tribulation? And she was like, what? And I'm like, I mean, this made up stuff of the 7 years with the guillotine and all that stuff, that's just made up. That's not in the Bible. And I was like, so why do you think that what we've experienced is not tribulation? I mean, we've had tribulation. And she's like, well, and I'm like, and what about all those people that have died overseas in other countries and what they experienced even back in Jesus's time, the persecution and stuff? I'm like, that's not tribulation? I'm like, what are you talking about? So I kind of put a smiley face at that because I'm like, because it kind of seemed like he was alluding to the rapture, like we'll be taken out of this. And I'm like, interesting.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I
don't want to be judgmental about it.
And like you said, I think your mom and you were right on, had a good viewpoint on one thing. It's like you can focus too much on it, whatever your belief is about the end times. So don't be so focused on heaven that you're no earthly good. There are some people that just get so into it and that's all they talk about and all they focus on is like, wait a minute, why aren't you like helping people, like in serving the poor? Why aren't you
evangelizing if you really believe that we're gonna...
Or just even like out helping people, like or giving to the poor, or serving the widows, whatever. Like, why aren't you doing those things? Like,
be like Jesus. What are you doing?
He
didn't focus on going back, and he knew he was going back. So I'm like, why?
So it's.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So yeah, I put the same thing, heaven question mark. Some commenters viewed this as a metaphorical song about a person's desire and curiosity to reach out and interact or experience others that are outside our realm. So it was a very non-religious, non-spiritual interpretation. Like, oh, it's, he's just singing about kind of like the Americans dreaming, meeting people that are outside our sphere and stuff like that. And I was like, to me, that's like sort of a lousy interpretation. I wrote, for me, I really feel like this is a song about our separate realities of this life and the afterlife, a better world we go to, those among the world far away, those in time times two. I had to think about that one for a while. Did you read that lyric?
Yeah.
It says those in time times two. And then the clincher, what is man at the end, which is definitely a biblical reference.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what is man that you're mindful of him? Psalms 8:3-6. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of them, human beings that you care for them? You have made them a little lower than the angels and crowned them with glory and honor. You made them rulers over the works of your hands. You put everything under their feet. There's no way that that's not a reference to that. I'm sorry. Especially with the whole rest of the song. I mean, and I do have a quote from this same article about that. He says, a better world we go to, those in time times two, stars above, stars below, and what is a man? And then the quote from David Chelsel is, it's really funny. What things can inspire me to write a song? This came to me after seeing a movie. Do you know which one? And then he said, it's the scene where James Dean is in the planetarium, Rebel Without a Cause, which I've never seen Rebel Without a Cause. Have you? Have you seen it?
Yeah.
I have not seen it. I need to watch this movie.
And the planetarium scene. Oh,
yes. He said, I like how the scene shows how insignificant man can seem in relation to the vast, endless universe. And I really feel like that this one, more than any of the other ones, I feel like there's a Christian thread, going through this whole thing.
A better place we go to without a trace.
Better place we go to, without a trace we will leave. A new face we will see. And it's like, so the Christian belief is you're resurrected and you have a new body.
Yeah.
A warm embrace we will receive. Those in front of me, those among the world far away. And then he talks about those. He talks about those in back of me at one point. And that's like, we're on a journey through time. So we're in this life and then there's going to be another reality that's separate, but beyond, and we move towards. I really like this song. It doesn't have like musically some of the dreamy things that the other songs have. That's why I said I felt like it was kind of like different, but it's an awesome song.
And I thought this was the only one that you could not put on. I mean, they did put it on a quote secular album, but you can't put this one on a secular album and say that it doesn't have any Christian references. I'm like, trying to say that it doesn't is like trying to put a square in a round hole. Like,
And I kind of think the same thing. I wonder, is that because of what we know?
Maybe, or maybe it's just because we're okay with that, and the reviewer or whatever doesn't want it to be, so is trying to find some other interpretation.
Yeah, I think it's hard to on this one though. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like that. Those in time times two. I was trying to wrap my head around that for a long time. I even tried to search it up and see, okay, is that a quote from something or whatever? I will say this, when I put into Google, those in time times two, the only thing that came up was a Revelation reference, which was a time, times, and half a time.
Yeah.
Yes.
in Daniel
is
and in
something to
Revelation.
do with Revelation, right?
Yeah.
I almost think it's a reference to that, but he just changed it a little bit. I'm probably wrong. I'll just say that. But I think he's talking about we're in time as we understand it. And then there's a time times two that's like the future reality, and like where time is different or something like that. I know that didn't totally make sense, but I don't know. I just think I think it's a way to say we're moving towards a place where time is different than what it is here.
And when I looked up what you said, because I just had to look it up, because I was like, I didn't even bother to look that up, but it says it's attributing it to the tribulation. What's interesting about this whole thing is that we're doing this at church. Derek's doing a short 4-week class on it because some people wanted to know what's the Anglican stance on it. And he's like, oh, here we go again. Because there's so many different views and stuff. And one of my favorite podcasts is the Appalachian Anglicans. And
interesting.
And they've done a series of this too. You'd have to listen to them. They are
I'll
great.
check it out. Yeah, I'll check it out.
They're hysterical, but they came out of the Pentecostal movement.
That's awesome.
Appalachians. And they go to Appalachia in the Pentecostal and they've become Anglican. What a change. I mean, total opposite ends, you know.
Pentecostal to
yeah. And so they're really interesting. And they're doing a 4-part series on not apologetics. What is it called? End times, whatever.
Eschatology.
Thank you.
Yeah,
there you go.
I knew it was an E.
One of the things that they brought out and that Derek brought out in Sunday school class was the 3.5 years. There are literally churches that have split over tribulation being for 7 years, or the Bible says 3.5 years. And that's what the reference is right here in Revelation 12:14. A times and a dividing of time means 3.5 years. So the tribulation will be 3.5 years. So there's those people that believe it's 3.5 years. And then rapture. And then there's those people that believe 7 years, raptured before that, 7 years raptured after that. And I'm like, oh, for the love. It's ridiculous.
It's all over the place.
That's what this article is saying, that it's referencing the 3.5 years of tribulation.
So that line is kind of like pulling the rapture thing back in a little bit.
Yeah.
Like when I looked it up, I didn't put anything biblical in my search. All I put was the lyrics, and that's the thing that came up over and over again. Was that so time and halftime. You
can't get away from it.
Yeah, I know they like to keep the Christianity or spirituality kind of downplay, they kind of keep it buried a little bit and symbolic and underneath the lyrics and stuff, but that one's pretty obvious.
That one's pretty brilliant
in a lot of ways.
They can do what they want. It's their album.
And that's great. I love it. Yeah. And then I'm happy that they did that, So, okay. Falling Through the Ice, the one you were looking for lyrics on.
I'm such an idiot.
You're not an idiot.
Because I know that there were several people that were like, I can't find the lyrics to this. They haven't posted any lyrics.
I put one word on this as a note. Instrumental.
There you
That's
go.
all I put. Historically, I am not a huge fan of instrumental music on albums, but in the past probably 5, 6, 7 years, I've become a person who enjoys instrumental pieces, like songs on albums. And I really like ambient, and that's what this is. Yes. It's very ambient. And the only other thing I can say about this is the title, Falling Through the Ice, is really cool. And I'm always trying to pull things together and make meaning out of a whole thing. And usually I'm wrong, like they didn't even intend anything. But it starts out like on this journey in the sailboat that's like metaphorical for life. And then there's all these different scenarios of struggles, that life brings, both highs and lows. And I don't know, Falling Through the Ice seems like something that's metaphorical for things that happen to us, maybe.
Yeah, I like that.
Did you have anything on that other than not being able to find the lyrics?
I said that the lyrics were elusive, but now I think that just the whole
they're very
thing,
elusive.
It's got that elusiveness to it.
They're going to remain elusive.
I love that there are other idiots out there going.
That's awesome. But you said there were other people looking for them, right?
Yes.
That's great. That's great.
Unlike,
maybe,
you know,
what? Maybe there's a version. I've heard bands before that had instrumentals, but then they had other versions, like demos or whatever, that had lyrics. So maybe there's a version of this where they did lyrics. I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, I just like
maybe I'm the idiot. I don't know.
They titled it so well that
they did.
You know, you'd think that there would be something to go with it.
Yeah, it's not just called Number 9.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not the 9th track.
Interlude.
Called the Ice. Untitled Number 9. Oh gosh. Okay, so Ballerina Out of Control.
I just love that title.
There's a reason why this is the most well-known Ocean Blues song and why it's the most played song on Spotify.
Why?
It's a great song.
It's
really good. And it never gets old for me. I've been listening to it since 1991. So
wow.
I still love it. I think it's a great song. It's not my favorite on the album, probably because it's the most well-known and the one I've heard the most. That's part of the reason. I think it's a great lyrically. It's great sonically. It's very cool as a metaphor for life and what people go through and
how they deal with it.
I mean, yeah.
Or don't with it.
Sometimes you do. Yeah. Sometimes you keep persisting in something that helps you not deal with other things. And I'm pretty bad about that. I'm one of those people that will throw myself into a project so I don't have to deal with this difficult thing. Yeah. That's a struggle of mine. And I think part of this talks about that.
Yeah.
But also there's a positive side to that in this song too, I think.
Yeah.
You know, that can be a positive thing, putting your focus into things when things are difficult, putting your focus into, you know, a project or a hobby or reading or whatever. I'm talking a lot. Go ahead. What do you got?
I absolutely love the title. My very first thing that came up was, it makes me think of my granddaughter, Harmony. She's in dance. And I was like, Ballerina Out of Control. That's Harmony. what a perfect dichotomy.
And it's awesome that her name is Harmony.
Yes.
Ballerina Out of Control.
She's, I mean, when you think of a ballerina, you think of grace and, you know, fluidity, but then Out of Control. It also brought to mind Black Swan. I'm really referencing a lot of movies. That movie.
I finally watched that movie a couple years ago, maybe 3 or 4.
That's
wow.
Yeah.
I was getting ready to say I love it, but I'm not. I kind of paused because I do.
I know,
but I'm like,
there's so many disturbing things, but I have so well executed, and I'm like, okay, Natalie Portman, you've got the acting chops. I was impressed.
Yeah, that was great.
A disturbing movie, but I really enjoyed it.
I can see the parallel though.
Yeah. And I was just thinking that's Harmony. Harmony is the sweetest little thing in the world. And she's also extremely volatile. She is my daughter over again, like part 2 of Brittany, but much more girly than Brittany was. I didn't have her. But I get to have her vicariously through Harmony. And Brittany's keeping her hair really long and she's in dance. And Brittany had short hair and she was in sports. And so she was like, I am going to have a girly girl. Well, you can't really make Harmony girly because she's tough, but she's tiny and she has that from Brittany. She looks just like her. And like I said, she's in dance, but we have to write a book about the things that she says. My daughter just texted me last night and I tell you, this kid, she got in trouble because she's naughty. She's naughty a lot. And I just adore her. She makes me laugh, so I cannot discipline her. But Brittany said, you're going to get a spanking, Harmony. She goes, Mommy, I need a soft spanking because I love my booty.
Oh my gosh.
How do you deal with that?
That's the one where you're like covering your mouth, like, because you're trying not to laugh.
I said, you weren't able to go through a spanking, or were you? And she goes, barely, but I knew that if you were here, it wouldn't have happened because you would be on the ground laughing.
That's the best. Oh my gosh.
Oh, she kills me. And I even told my principal that story today. And he's like, oh, I'm going to use that one tonight with my wife. I'm like,
nice.
So I just really love that. And I do love like you said, the concept of, I wrote this 2 lyrics down. Why think when we can play? And I'm like, and like you said, there's good to that. And there's really bad to that. I mean, there's, where you never stop or you never stop playing and grow up and think. But again, like I go back to how I was as a kid and how I still am to a certain extent. I'd rather not. Thank you. I do think about things way too much. And sometimes I'm like, I want to shut that off and I need to do something that's allowing me to. And it says she dances it all away. And I'm like, so she's being productive. I mean, she's doing something. She's creating art.
There are a lot more unhealthy ways to escape.
Right? Yeah. It doesn't say she
kind of
drinks
like reading. Like you're a reader, I'm a reader. I mean, come on. Us readers are escapers. I mean, let's just admit it, right? Like just say it.
Yeah, like Derek likes to criticize me, like that's his criticism, like, like my sister Joy was, like you just rather stick your head in a book. And I'm like, and so Derek's like, you just read to escape. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, give me a break. I have a bachelor's and a master's and I teach every day. Why would I want to read to learn? Okay. I do that all the time anyway, but when I'm reading for my pleasure, I don't want to read because he's always trying to get me to read, can you read this book about, Anglicanism and some of them I've read and I'm like,
more of an educational reading.
Yeah. And I'm like, I read to escape. Yes, I do. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. So why delve into it when you don't have to? And I love, this is my favorite line. I think on the whole album, would rather see the night than the reason of the day.
Yeah.
I love that line.
Yeah. What do you take from that line?
Rather than dragging something into the light. And I don't think that I'm alone with it. I think that this is the vast majority of us. We prefer to keep it in shadows because it's easier to deal with. When something is dragged, I wrote a play once. I have several plays in my head. I haven't written them down. But this play is a spotlight on the stage and you hear people talking, adults talking, but they're just barely visible on the edge of the spotlight. And they're saying things, but they're not saying real things. They're couching it in niceties and social, norms and stuff like that. And a little kid darts out into the light and says what they're really thinking. And another adult grabs the kid and pulls him back and says, no, I don't know what he was talking about. And then they say something else and the kid gets loose again and runs out into the light and says what everybody really, it's like the emperor's new clothes, and that's what that makes me think of, that, really in general as humans, I mean, wouldn't we rather deal with the night rather than see what's actually happening? I mean, that's why I don't watch the news.
Same. Yeah.
Better the devil you know than the one you don't, I mean, Shakespeare said it, he said that in Hamlet. Why not commit suicide? Because that way you don't have to deal with it. You don't have to deal with what's going on. Hamlet, you should just, he's like, maybe I should just kill myself and then I can get out of this,
There's an interesting fine line to it, I think, right? You could characterize it as putting your head in the sand, right?
Yes.
Which most people that aren't like that would characterize it that way.
Yeah.
It's that old thing. There's some positives to that, but there's also a shadow side.
The night begins the day. I think when we can play, I find it so hard to find a certain dress on that kind. As she twists and she whirls and she dances it all away. The problems persist, they won't go away. She twists and she whirls, dancing it all away. I'd rather see the night than the reason of the day.
That is a great line. Would rather see the night than the reason of the day.
I just love that. And I identify with that massively. I'm a dark person. I mean, I'm out here on the porch in the dark. I have the light on because Derek's like, are you going to turn a light on, you vampire? Because seriously,
you're not just going to fade in the darkness. I've done that so many times on Zoom calls. It's like, and then I'll realize, wait a minute, I can hardly see myself. They probably can't see me at all. because the light
That's
just
what
faded.
I do prefer that. I like the darkness. And we argue about it incessantly because he's like, I'm going up the stairs. There's a light switch right there. Why would you go up the stairs and not turn on the light switch? And I'm like, why would you turn on the light switch? I honestly and truly prefer the dark. And we just did parent teacher conferences this week. Today was our half day of parent teacher conferences. And everybody that comes into my room, every parent, every student, they're like, I love this. I have the overhead lights off. I can't teach with that. I have lamps. I hate fluorescent lights. And I'm like, that would make me anxious. And I would be like, and some of the other teachers, they're like, oh man, I love your room. It's so cozy. It's like being at home, but don't you have trouble not being able to see what the kids are doing all the time? And I'm like, I don't want to see what they're doing. No, I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, how is that a problem? Wait a minute.
Yeah, I'm like, I tend to move around the room constantly. I'm always walking through them and stuff. And I'm like, no, it's not a problem because they're much more chill when they're in there.
That sounds so wonderful. Like I'm putting myself back. What grades do you teach? I forgot.
7th and 8th.
Yeah, okay. So I'm putting myself back into those years and thinking how wonderful it would have been to have lower lighting and stuff instead of the harsh fluorescent thing. That would have been so calming. I would have had a much better junior high experience, and I would have been more calm and less anxious and nervous if that was the light. I'm not kidding.
Yeah,
like I'm being serious.
Every now and then I have to turn on the lights because we have to do something that on the table on the desk that we had to see, and the kids all go, "Oh no, my astro on!" And I'm like, "So
it's like a bunch of little vampires."
And I have music on, and a lot of the parents were like, "Oh, it smells good in here," and I'm like, "Yeah." When you work with 7th and 8th graders, you've got to have some room sense.
You got to have something to cover it up.
So I'm like, awesome. I would not like to walk into a classroom that's stark and doesn't have stuff hanging up and is bright and ugh. I mean, it just really, I do not like the sunshine. I'm sorry, I don't. So.
So it's like walking into a romantic Italian restaurant.
It is. I have curtains on the windows. I have curtains on the windows, and I didn't realize how unusual that was until I was observed by a group of teachers last week. And when we were doing our talking thing together, they were like, "You should go to Harmon's room. She has curtains." And I'm like, "Don't we all have curtains?" And they're like, "No, Janie, we all have blinds.
Everybody doesn't have those.
We have mini blinds, remember?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's what's under my curtains. That's right. Yeah." I hate those things. And they're like, "Yeah, all of us have sunshine streaming through our windows and the overhead lights on, and yours like curtains, dark music and light." And I'm like,
yours is cozy and the rest of it's industrial.
Yeah. Like, well, no wonder why the kids hate school. I would hate it too.
That's so great. All right, so this is your number 2 on the album.
This is my number 2. It was
number 1. It got dethroned by When Life Was Easy. This is also my number 2.
Okay.
I mean, that's not typical of me to
the most popular song.
Well, to hold a song that high. It's part of it's the nonconformist rebel, right? Like, okay, it's played on the radio all the time, or everybody else likes it. If it's the band everyone else likes, I don't want to like it. But yeah, this one, that's such a great song, and it holds up so well. There's everything about it is great. We got 2 more, and we go into Hurricane Amore. This song, man. This song's rough. I mean, it's really good, but I mean, it's I don't know if you have notes on this song. I have a few.
I do. What
you got? Let's hear what you got first.
I love the 2 things put together. The Hurricane and Amore. I'm like, okay, that's genius right there. Because right away before it even starts, you know that this is going to be about a volatile relationship and how love can just wreck you.
Yeah.
The quotes I put down were, "With this mask and wig." Love that. Love that.
It. Yes.
Because that's very much, I feel like that's the start of every relationship where you're putting on have you heard the joke about the guy who fell in love with the opera singer and went to all of her performances for weeks and weeks on end and finally convinced her to marry him? And so they're, on their wedding night, she takes off her wig and he's like, oh, wow. Okay. That's okay.
Okay.
And so then she washes her face and removes her makeup and he's like, wow. Look at that. And she removes her eyelashes and he's like, what's happening? And then she takes off her dress and she has a corset on, which she takes off. And then she's not corseted. And he's like, "For the love of God, woman, sing."
I've not heard that. That's hilarious.
I'm like, that is so relationship,
It is so,
gotta have the
so
disguise.
much. Yeah, and if the mask and wig, then it says with this love parade. I love that.
Yes. Oh, it's so good.
We always
then
got our best face on and our best,
Yeah.
behavior and,
Yes.
Go ahead.
And then once we've got the person, then you just let it go. And I'm like, That's why Derek always, when he counsels people, he's like, yeah, you guys shouldn't live together because, and they're like, oh, well, you guys need to make sure that we're going to be compatible. And he's like, you do realize until the ring's on the finger, you're still going to put up a facade. He's like, there's no way of guaranteeing that people aren't going to change and let things go once you're married. Yeah. That's the commitment part. And he's like, so, you can live together for 10 years and you're more likely to get divorced. So it's kind of pointless.
Interesting.
And he's like, we're the same. We were the same way. We had and he's like, well, when we were dating, I'm like, okay, shut up. We all know that it's totally different. I'm like, when we were dating, you were a lot different too. So
I think it's just a constant.
Yeah.
When you're in a new relationship, that's what you do and what happens, and it's kind of, it's understandable in a way, right? It's not like you're trying to be insincere. Like some people are, obviously, right?
Some people,
but it's not like you're trying to be insincere. It's just like when you go out to work or whatever, like you have a certain, I hate to say mask because I really don't want to say that, but you have a certain persona with different people in your life, and that you don't let everybody see the real you. And part of that's really good. Part of that's good. Like, you're in this position in my life. You're my acquaintance. You don't get to see everything.
Yes, exactly.
That's not who you are to me,
And we're not, as a general rule, as people, we're not as trusting of people. It takes a while to build up that trust and that vulnerability. And a lot of people like, especially if you have anything in your background, Derek does not like being vulnerable. And he's like, his highest compliment for a person, and he said this about you. He goes, yeah, I really like this person. When he's talking about anybody, he's like, I really like this person. I don't have to be on with him or her.
No, not
that's his highest compliment. And he said that about you. He's like, I really like them. You don't have to be on. And so,
good. I'm glad he feels that way, because that's the truth. Yeah.
Yeah. He feels that way about a lot of people that he has to be on, even some family members, And he's like, no, I don't mind the kids coming over. I was like, I thought you said that you were stressed and didn't want to deal with people. And he's like, I don't have to be on with the kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody else?
I totally get that.
Yeah. So I like that mask and wig. And this was more for him. I don't have as much of this issue. Again, because I tend to Pollyannize thing, I guess. I don't know. I think I misnumbered. Now I'm really upset with myself. I did skip 9. Oh, I was like, I thought there were 13 songs. No, Jamie, and
there's 11 or 12. There's 12, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is perfect. I love 13, but I was like, wait a minute. Okay. Anyway, sorry, I had to renumber those or I wouldn't be able to sleep. The part in there that says the Ides of March. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's Caesar. Et tu, Brute. So it's talking about and I think that when you let your guard down, when you're in love with somebody and you finally get to the point where you can let your guard down, that's when you're the most vulnerable. That's why the thin line between love and hate. That's what my love song list is called, a thin line. That's what on my list, I call it a thin line.
Interesting.
Because,
it's like a playlist on Spotify or something like that.
Yeah, all my playlists have unusual titles like that.
Cool.
But my thin line are the love songs, because that's the only way that you can actually be hurt. If you've been vulnerable with somebody, that's the only way they can hurt you. If you're not vulnerable with somebody, they can't hurt you.
Right.
And so that's that. You take off the mask and wig, and then you're vulnerable, and it's like, oh, and now you're gonna turn on me. So so.
Away.
I like the song.
Yeah, I like that. The Ides of March, the wind of May, and then it says away, and then it goes straight, knife to the heart, blade to the.
A lot darker than most of the songs.
So the notes I put tumultuousness of a romantic relationship, which is basically what we just, you were saying. And then I put, is this the same guy that wrote Marigold?
Did you do this Marigold?
Love song, this poetic love song, and now it's basically like this love relationship where it's like, okay, at the beginning it's always great, and then you start, no matter what, you end up in this spot where you're like, knife to the heart, blade to the mind. I love starch to the soul.
Oh, so good.
So the soul is stiffening.
The soul is stiffening. Oh you're not malleable. Oh, that's so good.
But it's so true though. Like any relationship is going to be like that. I'm like, any relationship, at some point you're going to go through that stuff,
Oh, yeah.
And some people more to more extent than others. Right. But no matter what, you're going to get out of that. We can call it the honeymoon phase, even though I don't know if that's exactly the right term, but like that facade part, where you're letting it go, and here's the real me, and here's the dirt behind my ears, and here's, whatever, right? The pedestal slowly lowering, and then sometimes it drops really quickly, right?
Yeah.
And then you get to love as an action more than as a feeling.
Yeah.
It's almost a more of an expression of love if I do something for you that I don't want to do.
Exactly.
Like, I do not want to I don't feel this. I don't want to do this. I'm going to do it anyway. To me, that's the highest expression of love for somebody. Like when you're going against what you feel like doing. Like, I don't feel like being nice to you or supporting you on this, but I'm going to do that anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know how I got off on this. Sorry. But
Eric has used that in sermons before, because he said when he's talking about that being a servant and stuff, he said, if you know my wife, you know that she's not a fading violet, and she's not a feminist, and I'm not. And he said, but I know that she expresses love for me when she makes my breakfast and makes food for me and brings me a drink and stuff, because in her flesh, that's not something that she naturally likes to do. I make him bacon. I despise bacon. And I make him bacon almost every morning because he likes bacon. And he's like, and why do you do that? And I'm like, well, that's because you like bacon. And he's like, see, that's ultimate love, that you do something that you don't like, but you do it consistently. And I'm like, even when we fought the night before, I'll make him breakfast or something. And sometimes he's like, okay, I'm angry at you because you didn't settle things last night, and I'm not eating that breakfast. And I'm like, well, then you're a jerk, because I made your breakfast, even though I despise you. So
yes, exactly. Right.
So.
The more that we talk about this, the more I love this song, even though this song isn't directly saying these things.
Yeah, exactly.
It's subtly referencing the sort of fairy tale of, in order to, be in love or love somebody, you have to have that feeling of love all the time. And if you feel that and do it, that's less meaningful than if you don't feel that and do it and show love to the other person. Because if you feel it, that's a lot easier, right? Yeah. It's a lot easier to make the bacon when you're feeling those lovey-dovey feelings, right? When you don't feel them and do it anyway, to me, that's love. Like, that's somebody you can count on and is going to support you and be stable with you. This song doesn't exactly say that, but it sort of highlights that there is that hurricane in love, and persevering through that, or like, staying through that storm. I don't know. Maybe I'm pulling too much out of it. It ends with amore wind, amore rain. Oh, Valentine, amore wind, amore rain. So it's not like it's a super like negative song about love. It's like,
no. Although my husband would jump in and say, that Saint Valentine was martyred for this thing. It's like, we call it Valentine's Day. Here's a card with his head cut off. What are we doing?
Oh, man.
He sometimes sends those to me, like those real Valentines, and I'm like, oh, would you stop?
The real. Yeah. So I don't know. That's all I really have to say on that one, I guess. Unless you have something else. Trying to look at my other notes.
Everything's just like, because that's how your brain works too. So it's like, it just like leads me into other things. And there's Susie Bacchus was one of my favorite singers a long time ago. She was a country singer, but she sang, she was from Northern Illinois. She was popular for a brief time in there a long time ago. But one of her songs that was popular was Cinderella. And the lyrics are like, hey, Cinderella, what's the story all about? I got a funny feeling we missed a page or two somehow. Cinderella, maybe you could help us out. Does the shoe fit you now? And I'm like, ooh,
nice.
I love that. I mean, is it still all that fairy tale stuff, or is it, and part of me likes that, to like, let's really see like the day after, but then another part of me is like, don't ruin it,
No, I totally relate to that. Yeah. There's definitely something to the fairy tale and the love, the feelings and all that stuff, part of it, but all right. So we are to the very final song, which you mentioned earlier, and I have some notes on this. You got to take a deep breath when you say the name.
Yeah.
I've sung one too many songs for a crowd that didn't want to hear. My first note is, that's a Morrissey song title if there ever was one.
Yes.
You can throw the Smiths in there too if you want to.
There you go.
And the song is very Smiths-like, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that they're fans of Morrissey and the Smiths because they had all sorts of titles like that, like really long. But like you said, it's longer than the song.
It's longer than the song. It's a very short song, honestly.
And it's so, what's the right word for that? I was going to say self-deprecating, but that's not exactly it, maybe. Like sort of fatalistic, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, can't come up with the word for it though. Like the song that's like, oh, poor me, like I'm like nobody loves me or whatever, I don't know.
Is self-deprecating, that might be right.
That's what came to mind first. Maybe that crossed with
pity party
or victimish or something. I don't know. Do you have any notes on this?
I love the title. It's my favorite title. And I love that the song is very short and succinct. The quote that I wrote down was, she strolls through my moods. I don't know why that just struck me, and I'm not remembering why now, but that's what I wrote down. So.
That's a really interesting line, isn't it? It's not she strolls through my mind.
No.
She walks through my mind. She strolls through my moods.
Yeah.
That's very
And so I'm like, I'm not sure if he's trying to say that she's steady for him while he's up and down, or if he thinks about her all the time, no matter what his mood is. I don't know.
Well, because strolling is like if you're strolling through a garden or something, you're like walking without a care in the world. You're easygoing, and through his moods, like, you know, he might be upset or angry, and she's like, oh, you know, everything's cool, everything's fine.
It makes me think
she's not affected by his moods or whatever. You know?
My son-in-law is a lot like that because, like I said, my daughter is very volatile and capricious, and he's very much like, "Hey, babe," and she's like, "Don't call me babe," you know.
If somebody's more like that, like, and when the other person's so laid back and like, oh, it's gonna be all right, like that just drives them nuts.
When I'm like really
Makes them
angry
so
and
upset.
Derek and I are fighting.
Get angry
about
with
something.
me.
Yes. Yeah. He's like, he just gets calmer and calmer. And I'm like, you sound like you're trying to be my freaking therapist. And I hate that. I'm like, you
Right.
gotta analyze me, fight with me.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly.
I feel like
exactly.
right now what you're feeling, I'm like, I will stab you through the eye. What does that tell you? I'm like,
what do you feel about that?
what do you feel about that?
Are you still calm? And we're wasting time in the coming going, losing time in the coming going. Do you have an idea of what that means?
My first thought was in the coming and going, I don't like it now. Like I said, my first thought was we should just get married because going back and forth. And then I'm like, I don't like that. That doesn't fit. So I was trying to put it with the title. I've sung too many songs for a crowd that didn't want to hear. We've wasted too much time with the coming and going. I have no idea. Maybe it's the effort that you put back and forth. Why do you keep going back and forth? Why do you keep going? If they don't want to hear what you're saying, just go and don't go back and forth and don't keep putting the effort in, I guess. But that sounds so negative. But I mean,
I'm going to stick with my original view of this being an album about life journey.
Okay.
And look at this as sort of the wrap up to that thought process. Like sort of you're moving towards the end of your journey and like, okay, all these things I've done, have they really been appreciated? I've sung one too many songs for a crowd that didn't want to hear. I don't know what that's got to do with the rest of the song. I don't know.
Maybe I've been performing too much and not just
maybe
present.
I'm going to throw a really wild thing out there, and I have no idea if this has got anything to do with this.
Yay.
Is she the Holy Spirit?
Oh.
I hear a voice and it's speaking to me. I hear a voice and it's speaking to me. She walks through my mind. She strolls through my moods. I hold your hand in the air. Tune drifts through my mind. That's probably got nothing to do with it, but I don't know. Since I have no clue, I'm throwing things out there.
Well, why not? I mean, that's,
But I do think it's a very Smiths-like song.
Yeah.
Both musically and in title. And I thought the Spanish guitar, there's a Spanish guitar in it that's really different than the rest of the album. It's really interesting. I mean, it works really well.
Yeah.
In there.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Total aside, but I introduce a new Spanish musician to my class every week because they just tended to either dismiss Spanish music, or if they're Spanish, they're like, they love it, but they don't, know a lot about it. So I'm introducing new people every week. And I did Los Lobos because my favorite band is
there you go.
Gypsy Kings, but I love Los Lobos. And I was talking about Los Lobos and the different artists in the original 5 and who played what. And they played all these different kinds of guitars. And one of them is called a guitarrón. And I said, do you guys know what the definition of a guitarrón is, what that translates to? And they're like, no, what? And I'm like, big Mexican guitar.
So it's one of those really big ones. I know, I can visualize it right now. That's
like so they cool. Like that's like rounded at the back, like you see in a mariachi band.
Yes,
that's
exactly, a mariachi band. Exactly.
And it
okay, I didn't know that.
Guitar. Yeah, and so we were watching something the other day, and there was a reference to a guitarrón, and the whole class went, big Mexican guitar. And I was being observed by
you're teaching them. You are teaching them.
One of my principals was in the room observing, and she just laughed, and she's like, obviously they taught that. That's the definition. I promise I didn't make it up. Okay. But yeah, I did like the Spanish guitar.
Yeah, I thought that was good. I don't know if it was a good guitarrón or not, but
I don't know.
It might have been.
Might have been.
So
I'm not sure.
That wraps up the album. And is that a good ending?
That is a great ending.
I guess that song's a good ending. I mean,
it is.
It's a pretty mellow, laid back reference to the rest of the songs, maybe.
Yeah, and it's almost
do
like.
Do you care? Are you listening?
Yeah, it's like I've presented all of this.
Is there any point in all this?
Yeah, I've presented all of this to you. Do with it what you will. Some of you will not, and those of you that will, that's great. But.
Yeah. So what do you think overall? You like it? You like the album?
I really do. And I'm going to be exploring their other albums now too, because I really, really happy to find a new music. I like it.
Good. Success. Well, thank you. Thanks for taking the time, talking to me, doing your research, which I know you'll always do.
All right.
I'm
glad to know that through Matt, that this band came to your attention. I just don't even remember.
I have such a vivid memory of the Ned's Atomic Dustbin, who I really liked that band. As soon as you said that, I was like, I'm going to listen to that band, because I was like, oh, whatever he likes is probably cool.
Yeah.
I would probably like it. And I was correct.
Yeah,
and I probably said 2 words to Matt at SBU, but like I think I told you before, he was in, your little group with Chad, I think, who were intimidated by me, you told me. And I was like, I'm intimidated by him. I thought, oh man, that's the guy's so cool. I can't talk to him. He would never
be able to accept
that. And Chad was a little bit different. Chad at first, but then I got to know Chad a little bit. And,
yeah.
But Matt was definitely in that category of like, okay, I can't.
Oh my gosh. Matt spent his entire life still being intimidated by everybody else, not comfortable with his own.
Isn't that hilarious? That's so funny the way it works.
I know.
So funny the way people work. But.
He had so few friends. I mean, I was his friend and Chad was his friend. He just didn't. That was hard for him. And
I was like, oh, that guy's cool. That's so good. He's so.
Oh my gosh, he thought you were the
in this campus of little yuppies.
He was so grateful to me for going over there, because he's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're going to go talk to him. Oh my gosh.
That's hilarious. That's just so
like,
funny.
What's the worst? I mean, he might be
so
like,
funny what we create in our heads, Yeah. Anyway. All right. Well, have a good night.
All right. You too.
Good talking to you. We'll talk soon.
You too. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode, folks. Thank you so much for listening to Jamie and I's conversation on Cerulean by The Ocean Blue. What a wonderful, dreamy album this is. If you're new to The Ocean Blue and have not heard their music, please go and check them out. I will leave links in the show notes, just to make it as easy as possible for you to find them. I was debating on what song to take us out with today, and with all of Jamie and I's talk of the Christian threads that are running through the music of The Ocean Blue, I found one of their very earliest recordings. There were a couple of songs that The Ocean Blue managed to get on a compilation cassette in late 1986. This was a compilation cassette put together by Lancaster's local Christian radio station, WJTL, and the cassette was entitled Preliminary Hearing. So the 2 songs on this release are called On Growing Up and Wounds of a Friend. And I'm fairly sure that even some of you Ocean Blue fans have not heard either of these 2 songs. They are findable online on YouTube, and this cassette compilation also has some songs by the Innocence Mission, who were mentors to the Ocean Blue. So I would encourage you to seek all of that out. And if there was any question about the Ocean Blue having a Christian foundation, they had this release on a Christian radio station compilation, and the title of the song I'm going to play, Wounds of a Friend, relates to a specific Bible passage. So I will let you draw from that what you will. So, friend, I leave you with Wounds of a Friend. Until next time, take care.
loves at all times when it is hard.